Let me ask you something. How many of you have lost sleep over a problem, overthought a situation until your mind felt exhausted, or tried to fix something that was never in your hands to fix? I've been there. We stress, we overthink, we try to take matters into our own hands only to feel even more drained. But let me tell you something today. God is already handling it. He has already worked it out. Your job is not to figure out how. Your job is to trust that He already had. The enemy wants you to drown in overthinking. He wants you to believe that if you don't have an answer right now, then maybe God isn't working. But faith isn't about seeing, it's about believing. Think about Moses at the Red Sea. He had no way out, but God was already handling it. The sea wasn't parted yet, but God already had the solution. Think about Joseph in prison. He didn't know how he would be freed, but God had a plan all along. Think about your own life. How many times have you worried about something that later worked out on its own? God was handling it the whole time. Fear is one of the greatest tools the enemy uses against us. It whispers doubts into our minds, makes us question God's plan, and leads us to believe that we must have all the answers right now. Fear is what causes us to overthink, analyze every detail, and play out every possible worst-case scenario in our minds. But faith is the weapon that defeats fear. Faith is what tells us, I don't have to know how this will work out. I just have to know that God is working. Think about this. How many times in your life have you feared something that never even happened? How many nights have you spent tossing and turning, trying to figure out a solution, only to realize later that God had already handled it? The truth is, fear is a liar. It convinces us that if we don't take control, things will fall apart. It tricks us into thinking that God isn't moving fast enough, that we need to step in and help Him. But faith says God is never late. He is never absent. He is always working, even when I can't see it. When we choose faith over fear, we are making a powerful declaration. We are saying, I refuse to let worry consume me. I refuse to let stress dictate my life. I will trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not on my own understanding. This is not always easy. There are moments when everything around us seems uncertain, when we don't see a way forward, when the situation looks impossible. That's when faith must step in. Look at the story of Peter walking on water. When Jesus called him out of the boat, Peter started walking on the waves with full faith. But the moment he took his eyes off Jesus and focused on the wind and the storm around him, fear crept in. What happened? He began to sink. The storm didn't change, his faith did. That is exactly what happens when we allow fear to take over. The problem may remain the same, but the moment we lose sight of God's power, we begin to sink in doubt, worry, and anxiety. Faith is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who does. The Bible tells us in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. If fear is not from God, then we must reject it. We must push back against the thoughts that make us doubt, the emotions that try to overwhelm us, and the lies that tell us God is not in control. When we live in faith, we live in freedom. Faith releases us from the constant burden of trying to fix everything ourselves. It allows us to rest knowing that God is already at work. Faith is what gives us peace in the storm, confidence in uncertainty, and strength in our weakness. It reminds us that we are not alone, that we are not forgotten, and that we serve a God who is greater than anything we will ever face. There are times when fear will try to rise again. Maybe you're waiting on a job, a financial breakthrough, healing, or restoration in a relationship. Maybe you're facing a challenge that seems too big, too complicated, or too painful. Fear will tell you that it's hopeless, but faith will remind you that God is in control. Faith says, I don't see the way, but I know He is making one. Faith says, choosing faith over fear is not a one-time decision. It is a daily battle. Every day we must choose to believe that God's plan is bigger than our problems. We must remind ourselves that no matter how bad things look, God is still in control. We must refuse to let fear dictate our thoughts, our actions. Imagine how different your life would be if you truly believed that God is handling everything. Imagine how much peace you would have if you stopped overthinking and simply trusted. What if instead of worrying, you prayed? What if instead of doubting, you worshiped? What if instead of fearing the worst, you expected the best? God is already handling it. Whatever it is that's keeping you up at night, whatever it is that you're stressing over, whatever it is that feels impossible, He is working on it. Your only job is to trust Him. Your only responsibility is to have faith. Stop trying to carry a burden that was never meant for you. Lay it at His feet. Let go of fear, embrace faith, and watch what God will do. Faith is not blind optimism. It is a deep, unshakable trust in the one who holds the universe in His hands. And if He can hold the universe together, He can certainly handle your situation. Stop overthinking. Stop doubting. Stop trying to control everything. Choose faith over fear and walk in the peace that God has already promised you. Letting go of control is one of the hardest things for us as human beings. We like to plan, to organize, to make sure everything is in order, and to know exactly how things will work out. But life doesn't always go according to our plans. Things happen that we don't expect. Doors close that we thought were meant for us, and sometimes, no matter how hard we try, we can't seem to fix or change the situation in front of us. That's when frustration sets in. That's when stress takes over. That's when we start to overthink, trying to figure out every possible way we can force things to happen in our own strength. But the truth is, the more we try to control everything, the more we end up exhausting ourselves. We hold on to situations, relationships, jobs, or problems that were never meant for us to fix. We replay conversations in our minds, overanalyze decisions, and try to predict outcomes, thinking that if we just think hard enough, we'll find the perfect solution. But what if I told you that control is an illusion? What if I told you that no matter how much you plan, prepare, or overthink, you will never be able to control everything? That truth may seem scary at first, but in reality, it's freeing. Because if we are not in control, that means we don't have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. That means we can surrender our worries, our plans, and our struggles to the one who is in control, God. God never designed us to handle everything on our own. He never asked us to figure everything out. He simply asks us to trust Him. But trust requires surrender. Trust means releasing our grip on the things we cannot change and believing that God has already gone before us. It means acknowledging that our ways are not always the best ways, that our understanding is limited, and that God's plans are far greater than anything we could ever imagine. Think about the times in your life when you tried to force something to happen. Maybe you held on to a relationship that was toxic, thinking that if you just tried harder, things would change. Maybe you pursued a job or an opportunity that seemed perfect, only to watch it fall apart. Maybe you've been worrying about your future, trying to map out every detail, yet nothing is going the way you expected. And now you're left feeling frustrated, confused, and drained. But what if the delay, the closed door, or the unanswered question is actually God protecting you? What if He is redirecting you to something far better than what you had in mind? When we insist on controlling everything, we limit what God can do in our lives. We hold on to things that He is asking us to release. We cling to situations that He is trying to free us from. And we block the blessings that are waiting for us on the other side of surrender. But when we let go and allow God to take over, we open ourselves up to His peace, His guidance, and His perfect timing. God's plan is not something that we have to force into place. It is something we step into when we trust Him fully. Letting go doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop carrying. It means we stop trying to manipulate outcomes and start believing that God is already working things out. It means that instead of stressing over what we don't know, we rest in the fact that God knows exactly what He's doing. There is so much peace in surrender. When you release control, you also release anxiety, fear, and stress. You stop overthinking and you start believing, you stop panicking, and you start resting in God's promises. The moment you decide to let go and trust God is the moment you step into true freedom. Because when you give up control, you're not losing anything. You're gaining the certainty that God is in charge, that He loves you, and that He will never fail you. Maybe right now you're facing something that feels overwhelming. Maybe you don't see a way forward, and everything in you wants to overthink, overanalyze, and try to figure it all out. But I challenge you today, pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that God is already handling it. He doesn't need you to solve it. He doesn't need you to stress over it. He just needs you to trust Him. Surrender is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. It means you recognize that God's hands are much stronger than yours. It means you understand that He sees what you cannot see, knows what you do not know, and is already making a way where there seems to be no way. Letting go of control is not losing power, it is gaining peace. It is stepping into the assurance that God is already working things out for your good. So today, make the choice to stop overthinking. Make the decision to stop carrying burdens that were never meant for you. Lay them at God's feet and trust that He will handle them. Let go and let God. Because the moment you do, you will find a peace that no amount of control could ever give you. The power of prayer and patience is something that many of us underestimate. In a world that moves so fast, where instant gratification has become the norm, waiting can feel frustrating. We want immediate answers, immediate solutions, and immediate results. When we pray, we expect God to respond right away, and when He doesn't, we begin to wonder if He heard us at all. Doubt creeps in, and we start overthinking, questioning if we prayed the right way, if we missed something, or if God is even listening. But the truth is, God's silence is not His absence, and His delays are not His denials. He hears every prayer, and He answers in His perfect timing. The problem is not that God isn't working. It's that we often lack the patience to wait for His plan to unfold. Prayer is one of the most powerful tools we have, yet too often we treat it like a last resort instead of our first response. When we're struggling, we try to fix things on our own first, and only when we realize that we can't, we turn to God in prayer. But what if we flipped that? What if instead of stressing, we started praying? What if instead of overthinking, we trusted that every word we speak in prayer reaches God and sets His plan into motion? God's Word tells us to be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Philippians 4:6. That means that instead of worrying, we should be praying. Instead of letting our minds spiral into overthinking, we should be bringing our concerns to God. But prayer isn't just about asking, it's also about trusting. It's about believing that when we lay our burdens at His feet, He will take care of them. It's about knowing that even when we don't see the answer right away, God is already working behind the scenes. Patience is the part that challenges most of us. We live in a world that teaches us to rush decisions, rush relationships, rush success, but God operates on a different timeline. His ways are higher than our ways, and His timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't match ours. The waiting period is not a punishment, it's preparation. God often allows us to wait because He is working on something greater than we can see. Sometimes we are waiting because we are not ready for what we are asking for. Sometimes we are waiting because there are things that need to align before the answer can come. And sometimes we are waiting because God wants to grow our faith in the process. Think about a farmer planting seeds. When he plants them in the ground, he doesn't see results right away. He doesn't dig up the soil every day to check if the seed is growing. He trusts the process. He waters the soil, makes sure it gets sunlight, and waits patiently because he knows that growth is happening beneath the surface. Our prayers are like seeds. When we pray, we are planting seeds of faith. Just because we don't see immediate results doesn't mean nothing is happening. The answer is growing beneath the surface, and in God's perfect time, it will break through. There are countless stories in the Bible of people who had to wait on God's promises. Abraham waited years for the son God had promised him. Joseph spent years in prison before stepping into his destiny. The Israelites wandered in the desert before reaching the promised land. None of them saw immediate answers, but in the waiting, God was working. He was shaping them, preparing them, and positioning them for the blessing He had in store. The same is true for us. Just because we don't see the answer now doesn't mean it's not coming. Just because God is silent doesn't mean He's not moving. The enemy wants us to believe that waiting means we've been forgotten, but that is a lie. Waiting is a sign that God is orchestrating something bigger than we imagine. It's a sign that He is aligning things in ways we cannot yet see. So what do we do while we wait? We keep praying, we keep trusting, we keep believing. We resist the urge to overthink, to doubt, to take matters into our own hands. We remember that God is faithful, that His promises never fail, and that His timing is always right. And when the answer finally comes, we will see that it was worth the wait. God's answers are never late. They arrive exactly when they are supposed to. No amount of worrying, stressing, or overanalyzing will speed up His timing. But prayer will keep us connected to Him. Patience will keep us at peace. And when the breakthrough comes, we will look back and realize that God was handling it all along. Peace in the process is one of the greatest gifts that comes with trusting God. Life is unpredictable, full of ups and downs, moments of joy and seasons of uncertainty. When we don't know what's coming next, our natural instinct is to worry. Our minds start running in circles, trying to figure out every possible outcome, replaying the past and fearing the future. But what if I told you that peace isn't found in having all the answers? Peace is found in knowing that God is already handling it, even when we don't see how. So many people believe that peace is something they will experience after their problems are solved. They think, I'll have peace when I get the job, when I get the breakthrough, when my prayers are answered. But true peace isn't based on circumstances. True peace comes from knowing that no matter what happens, God is in control. It means that even in the middle of uncertainty, even when life feels chaotic, even when things aren't going the way we planned, we can still have peace because we trust the one who holds our future. One of the biggest reasons we struggle with peace is that we try to carry burdens that were never meant for us. We think it's our job to figure everything out, to fix every problem, to make sure everything works out perfectly. But when we live that way, we're constantly stressed, exhausted, and overwhelmed. The Bible tells us in Matthew 11:28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." God never intended for us to live in constant anxiety. He calls us to lay our worries at His feet and trust that He is handling what we cannot. When we stop overthinking and choose to rest in God's promises, we experience a peace that doesn't make sense to the world. It's the kind of peace that allows you to smile even when you're facing challenges. It's the kind of peace that gives you strength even when you don't have all the answers. It's the kind of peace that carries you through storms, not because the storm has disappeared, but because you know God is in the boat with you. Look at the story in Mark 4 when Jesus and His disciples were in a boat and a violent storm arose. The disciples panicked, convinced they were going to die. But where was Jesus? He was asleep in the boat. Imagine that. While the storm raged around them, Jesus was resting. Why? Because He knew that the storm was under His authority. He knew that His Father was in control. And when the disciples woke Him in fear, He rebuked the wind and the waves with 3 simple words: "Peace, be still." Instantly, the storm stopped. That same Jesus is in your boat. That same Jesus who calmed the storm is the one who is handling your situation. So why are you afraid? Why are you overthinking? Why are you letting worry steal your joy? If Jesus could sleep through the storm, shouldn't we also learn to rest in His power? Peace in the process means that even while we wait for answers, we are not consumed by worry. It means that even when we don't understand what God is doing, we trust that He knows what's best for us. It means that we refuse to let fear control our minds and instead allow faith to lead our hearts. The enemy wants to rob you of your peace. He wants to fill your mind with worst-case scenarios, with doubt, with the belief that if you don't stress about it, nothing will change. But peace is not passivity. It is an active choice to trust God. It is a decision to say, "Lord, I don't see how this will work out, but I trust that You do. I don't know when my breakthrough will come, but I know You are working. I choose peace over panic. I choose faith over fear." When we embrace peace, we experience a freedom that worry could never give us. We stop wasting energy trying to control things that are beyond us. We stop living in anxiety about tomorrow and start appreciating the blessings of today. We stop trying to rush God's timing and start resting in His promises. No matter what you're going through, no matter how uncertain things may seem, know this: God is already handling it. He has gone before you. He has made a way, and He is holding your future in His hands. So let go of overthinking. Release the need to control everything. Stop letting worry steal your joy. Instead, choose peace. Choose to trust. Choose to rest in the knowledge that God has already taken care of it. Faith over fear is a choice we must make daily. Life presents us with countless situations that test our trust in God. When we face the unknown, when things don't go according to plan, or when challenges seem impossible to overcome, fear naturally creeps in. Fear whispers, what if things don't work out? What if I fail? What if I'm not strong enough? But faith responds with confidence. God is in control. God is faithful. God will make a way. Fear is a tool the enemy uses to keep us stuck. It keeps us overthinking, doubting, and questioning God's promises. It convinces us that we have to figure everything out on our own. It magnifies problems and minimizes God's power. But the truth is, fear is a liar. It only has as much power as we allow it to have. When we operate in faith, we strip fear of its control over our minds and hearts. Faith doesn't mean we won't feel fear. It means we won't be ruled by it. It means that even when things look uncertain, even when we don't have all the answers, we choose to trust that God is already handling it. We choose to believe that His plans are greater than our worries. We choose to focus on His promises rather than our problems. Think about the story of Peter walking on water. When Jesus called him out of the boat, Peter stepped onto the water, walking toward Him. As long as Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he did the impossible. He defied nature and walked on water. But the moment he focused on the storm around him, he began to sink. That's what fear does. It shifts our focus from God's power to our problems. It makes us forget that the same God who called us is the one who sustains us.